A common barrier can be believing that a future relationship has to go or will go the way that a past relationship went.
Welcome to the Plenty of Husbands podcast for women who are older, wiser, and hotter. This is where we inspire women in midlife to believe they can love again. And I'm your host, Robin Fisher Roffer. So you're divorced or you're widowed. Now what? You don't want to live without love, but are you ready to let go and trust again? Well, today I'm sitting down with Justin Pere, a licensed mental health counselor. We're going to have a frank discussion about the what's going on in our heads and the hearts after a relationship ends. And Justin brings over a decade of experience as the owner of Clarity Counseling Seattle. He specializes in helping couples reignite their intimacy and connection. His philosophy on love is profound. While early relationships may be driven by chemistry, lasting love relies on emotional safety, curiosity, and the ability to tackle conflicts together. Justin believes that healthy love isn't about finding the perfect partner. It's about two people committed to growing and understanding. So in today's episode, we'll tackle why desire and connection often shift in new relationships and how you can find your way back to intimacy without blame. Justin will share valuable insights on how emotional safety, curiosity, and open communication can reignite that spark, especially for women like you, ready to embrace love again. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get inspired by Justin Pere. Justin Pere, welcome to Plenty of Husbands.
Thank you, Robin. I'm happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you here. Now, I've got a question for you. What are the biggest mental barriers women face when re-entering the dating scene after a divorce or loss?
There are a number of them. Let's see, I'm going to pick one. A common barrier can be believing that a future relationship has to go or will go the way that a past relationship went. By that, I mean, by the time that we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, I'm 52, most of us have had enough experiences with relationships where they didn't work. I want to stay away from the word failed, but some of them ended miserably and painfully, or we may see a trend in those relationships. And it's hard not to conclude that what has happened before is what's going to happen again. So I really encourage when I work with people, men, women, and all gender expressions, to be open to the possibility that it's not just finding a new partner, it's finding a new way to relate to somebody. It's finding a new relationship that you're not destined to have things play out the way they did before. You talk a lot about hope. I've listened to your interviews with your people here, and hope is so important to love that you emphasize that so much here, Robin, because I talk to my clients about that a lot. We have to be open to things being different. And, how you make that different is a whole other discussion. I think that's part of what we'll talk about today. But I really encourage people to be open and optimistic, and just the possibility is a key word that I talk about with people.
I think that's so important and I agree with you. I think that the biggest barrier women face when re-entering the dating scene is they're afraid they're going to marry or date or get into something deep with the same guy with a different face. And that happened to me 3 times. They always seem so different too. And I thought, I've cracked the code. I've got this nailed, and there he was again, somebody who would abandon me. And that's what I would choose because I was abandoned by my mother. And it took therapy and working with a counselor like you to understand what I kept doing. So how can emotional safety be established in a new relationship, especially when past experiences have created fear or distrust?
Part of emotional safety is where you are with your own relationship with yourself. We talk about the other person in a minute, but as far as looking at yourself, how much do you understand what you're bringing into the relationship within you? What are your own patterns? What is your relationship with these different parts of you? I talk to clients a lot about different parts. And so if we feel emotionally safe within ourselves, by that I mean how to deal with our internal criticism, our judgment, the ways that we're hard on ourselves by ourselves, within ourselves, then we can show up differently with a partner. And you're asking your question probably in the context of with this other person. So part of what we're determining as we're dating people is this someone who I can be emotionally safe with? And that's not everybody, but it's a lot of people, right? And part of the hope and the optimism that I have is doing this for 22 years is I meet so many people, let's say so many men who are really great. They're really great. And they're single at 60 for all sorts of reasons, but it's not because they're not emotionally safe people who haven't done a lot of their own work, because they often have, right? So part of this is, how am I showing up with you in these initial dates and in the initial months of our relationship? And of course, moving forward, but also who are you as I get to know you? And do I have safety with you? Do I feel seen and accepted for who I am? Do you value me? Am I safe from your criticism and your attacking and your vitriol and the things that make us feel unsafe and a situation that we should leave? And there's so many people that are ready to give that to a partner. It hasn't happened in past relationships enough, and they've done a lot of work. Those are the people that usually knock on my door, and they're like, I don't know what to do, but I know that what I've been doing so far hasn't been working. And so it's like, great, that's what I'm here for.
Well, tell us a little bit about those 60-something men that walk into your office. What are they looking for that they're not finding in women? And what are some of their, okay, let's just call it pet peeves about the women they're dating? Like what's working and what's not working for them, and what do they really want?
They're wanting connection, they're wanting closeness, they're wanting to be accepted, they're wanting friendship. Such a core part of our romantic relationship is still based on friendship. So, a pet peeve can be, men are likely to feel controlled. Whether or not they're being controlled is something totally different. And I'm often helping the couples I work with to, like, you're actually not being controlled, even though that's your experience. So I hear that more than anything from the male clients I work with, is I don't want someone who is controlling. And that's part of our work, is to help them understand, like, that is not your partner controlling you. That is your partner doing the work of a relationship. She's just trying to talk to you. She's trying to get you to open up to her. She's trying to let you know what isn't working for her, what she needs when her feelings are hurt. And you have to talk through that. You have to show up. And so when you say, I've been with people who are too controlling and I want someone who's easier, I would say, well, none of our relationships are easy. I mean, they're all work. And work doesn't, even great relationships are work.
You're making me remember, after my second divorce, I had this incredible client who I absolutely adored. He wasn't my immediate client. He was like 2 levels up, but I had to get a lot of things approved by him. And we developed this incredible friendship, and we would go to lunch together. It was really fun. And he had just left his wife, and I already was single. And I said, we have so much in common. We have such a great time. We have such a wonderful friendship and working relationship. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we went on a date? And I asked him out, because we were in a work situation. I thought the only way, he's never going to ask me out, but I could ask him out. And I was his consultant, so it wasn't like I worked in the company or anything. But
Sure.
He said to me, Robin, I would love to date you, except for one thing. The woman that I'm looking for needs to bring me ease. I just want to, at the end of a hard day, come home and lay my head on the pillow and not be challenged. And you're very challenging. And I thought, wow, okay. But I love that honesty, by the way. First of all, he ended up marrying somebody challenging, because most women, like you just said, Justin, we call it. Like we say, I don't like that you did this. I don't like, and I think, what you're talking about is men coming into your office and wanting to step into a relationship that creates a great connection and be willing and open for you to say, all relationships are challenging. She's not trying to control you. She's trying to create intimacy and honesty. And you just need to soften a little bit. Actually, maybe the ease might need to come from him.
Exactly.
So that he can have a deeper relationship with a woman who's authentic. And because I did have a relationship where I did lose my voice, Justin, I really, at some point, I felt like, gosh, I just need to turn it off. And that's when I became inauthentic, lost a sense of self. And I think women, and I want to know if you agree with this and what your thoughts are. I think some women are afraid of losing their voice again and disappearing in a man's world in the relationship with the partner they're with. Do you find that? And if so, what is how can they flip the script, and what should they be looking for then in somebody?
Yeah, that can that could definitely happen, and that's something that never should or need to happen. If I'm working with an individual and they're dating someone and that's their experience in the relationship, I'd say bring that person in here. We got to talk together, right? We have to have everyone involved here, because the partner needs to come to understand, to really get, your partner is losing their voice and they're losing their power, and they are like, this is not working for them as a person, and that can't continue, and that person won't stay with you, and neither should she, if that's how it is. So people, I mean, men and women, but often men, are needing to better understand how they're contributing to what's going on there. I could see someone saying, I don't, why is that my problem? Or like, oh, what does that have to do with me? Right. And that they have to come to understand that there are relational patterns between the people that are resulting in that. And I always tell people, you are 100% responsible for your 50% of this relationship. And so a lot of the work of relationship therapists like me, individuals or couples in front of us, is helping people to understand what's my 50%? How am I contributing? So I would really help that person. I mean, I'm speaking more in terms of therapy, which is not necessarily the context you're asking about. But if they were in front of me, I'd help these two to really communicate with each other about what's happening here, help them understand why that's happening. If I were working individually with that woman, I'd want to help her to understand what in the past might be coming up for her that's contributing, not causing, but contributing to her 50% around losing her voice. And we're really seeing, can that change in this relationship? And often it really can. That's part of where hope comes for me, is I see couples make changes all the time that they never thought they could. And then some people will find, you know what, we've worked on this for a while. This is still happening, and this isn't acceptable to me. And we all have to have our deal breaker, our list of things where it's like, I will not tolerate that. I can't. And so I need to go. But we always want to see what can change here in a relationship, if that's someone's experience, before we ever call it quits. And more often than not, couples can work through that.
That's great. I want to know about that first bit. So we're talking now, we've moved into down the line, and it could be 3 months down the line where the woman is feeling like she's already losing her voice. She's already losing a sense of self. She's not authentically herself. He's feeling too challenged or too controlled by her honesty, right? There's already a problem. And a lot of women and a lot of men will stay in the relationship for other reasons. There's good sex, there's good chemistry, and they're misguided in thinking that's connection. Many people rush into new relationships for the thrill of chemistry. What are some signs that they should focus more on the emotional connection instead? How do they, get away from thinking, oh, if it's not hot with us, then it's over?
And sometimes the hottest start to a relationship is maybe not the person that's going to be our long-term mate. And in saying that, I don't mean to suggest run away from anyone that you have this amazing chemistry with or this great sex with. That it can work. But I say that as just a reminder for people when I'm working with someone and they say all these fireworks are going off at the beginning. I said, that's amazing and congratulations. And let's just keep an eye on what's happening here, right? Because that's lighting up something in you. It's also genuinely about what's happening with you too, but it's also about what's happening with the individual person that is having that experience. What is that doing for me? And so, but if you have chemistry, like, enjoy it. That's wonderful. You're going to get 3 months to 3 years out of it. And
if that's all there is, Justin, that's what you're saying. If that's the heavy lifting is all in the sex department and the rest is kind of on the weaker side, they're going to get 3 months to 3 years. So you want to kind of flip that ratio, right? Find somebody that is more about the connection.
Yeah. And you may not know until you're a number of months in before, that's when things start to settle. And that's when, we call it the honeymoon stage, therapists call it limerence, right? But this limerence state with your physiology, that's when after 3 months to about 3 years, if you're lucky, you get 3 years, things start to settle down and you move from more limerence to the attachment stage. And so sometimes we can't know at the beginning what's possible in the relationship because we have so many things going on in our brains and our bodies. And that's wonderful. And fewer things better for a human experience than to fall in love with somebody, right? But we have to just keep an eye on, yes, this is great and sex is great and I'm so excited about you. And when I talk, do you really listen to me? When I have a difference than you, do you respect that and allow me to have a conflict without that being a fight? When you're upset, do you let me know, or do you sit there and pout or let that stew or have resentment toward me, right? We need to keep our eyes open to Like, how's this going in the core ways that we want our relationship to be? Do I feel close, connected, like this is friendship, like you're respecting me and you're really seeing me and I have a voice here, while I'm also enjoying that we are just in la la land together, just having that wonderful experience of the start.
And you need both, right? There has
Yeah.
to be that feeling of sexual intimacy and the emotional connection. That's the magic part. What happens when one is outweighing the other? I also know couples that are in friendship marriages. The sex has been gone for, let's say, a decade,
Yep.
and now they're just sort of playing house and they're being each other's best friend.
Mhm.
But with their friends, they're complaining that there's nothing there, but they don't want to leave it. How do you get people back to a place of intimacy?
It's a great question. It's a long process, but it's very doable. And I have couples. I've had a couple come in and see me that hadn't had sex in 20 years, intercourse in 20 years. Yeah. And they found their way back.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good story. How
Yeah. Yeah. I, did. I wish I could talk about them.
I probably would take days to talk about, but just
Yeah, exactly.
you did.
Yeah, it was a long process. It wasn't quick, but it was helping them to understand, how did we get here? What's the story here that explains the origin story of how we got to this point 20 years in? What happened along the way? A big part of it was working through resentments, because both of them were deeply upset with each other. And they blamed each other for a lot of that. And that's very common. I'm talking about this couple, but more broadly, couples, you go years without sex and you're going to have resentment. So you have to really work through that. It was a lot of unearthing that and making a safe space for them in session, but more importantly, outside of session, in their kitchen, on their couch at home, to be able to talk through that openly and honestly in ways that they hadn't before. And that's, part of working on sex is talking about sex. One of the best ways to work on intimacy is have intimate conversations. And that's part of what couples therapists do, is help them to understand, what the heck do we do when we go home, without falling into our previous patterns. So it was really shaking things up, talking about things they hadn't talked about, and then slowly re-engaging in touch, right? It's less about desire and it's more about pleasure. And any sex therapist you have on this podcast will probably use words like that. We're moving away from desire and more about, let's have people do things that feel pleasurable, do things that feel good, don't do things that don't. I mean, it's obvious when you say it, but couples usually aren't talking about that. So it's, let's have pleasurable touch. It doesn't have to be 10 out of 10 pleasant when you feel it. If it's 1 or 2 or 3 out of 10, I say consider that a win. That's a successful encounter. And let's just get you touching in ways, because often couples that haven't had sex, they're often not hugging much. There's some affection, but it's a different type of touch. And so let's ease into the shallow end of the pool with things that are difficult, but not too difficult that you won't do it. And let's get you back into pleasure, because people haven't lost their sense of touch and pleasure and what a kiss feels like and what good smells feel like and your erogenous zones. I mean, all of that is still totally hooked up, but this couple is disconnected. And so we're helping them to reconnect.
That's so beautiful. And it gives me so much hope. And we talked about optimism at the beginning of the show, and the idea that a couple could go 20 years and then open up to love like that and to feel good together. That's so motivating. So let's say that couple didn't make it and they get divorced. How can the woman in the relationship, even the man in the relationship, navigate their feelings of guilt or loss while trying to embrace new love? I would think that's hard to do, because there's always a part of you that's hoping it won't turn out like the last one, I think. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I love that you just used the word part. I mean, I could have a whole other, I'm going to really try to control myself here, because I love talking about parts. It's actually a whole form of therapy called IFS, or internal family systems. And that's something I've been really into in the last couple of years of doing another deep dive into another theory. One way to answer your question is, you look at the parts of you that are scared, that are, what did you say, grieving?
Mm-hmm.
The parts of you that are, you said, guilty, that believe we should feel guilty, right? We can think of ourselves as being really complex and complicated. We have a bunch of parts to us. There's not just one version of us. There are multiple versions of us. It's all us, right? But there are parts who have the role of bringing in guilt as part of helping us, of bringing in grief as part of accepting loss and letting things go and accepting change. The parts that are scared to try again with somebody else after a bitter divorce like that, or a sexless marriage. All of these parts of us have positive intention. They're all trying to help us, but we need to come to understand, how are you trying to help me? What is your role? Let me work on my relationship with you so that in these moments that matter, like starting to date again, I can listen to a voice in me that's another part. It's not really a part. We call it self, like our true selves, that know that it's okay to try love again, that know that we need to experiment and risk, and that what's happening now is a different person than the person before. What happens in the future, I'm not destined to repeat what happened before. That was then, but we have to listen to that version of us in order to be willing to take the steps of re-engaging with people, and that can totally be learned.
That's so helpful. What advice, I love your advice, so I'm going to ask you for more. What advice would you give to women who fear they've missed their chance at love or happiness? Like they just feel like I'm too old, my body's out of shape. I took care of the last one for, decades. I don't want to take care of another man. What are the ways that what advice would you give those women who are fearing they've missed out somehow?
Well, if you wanted to approach them, if you ask me, and I might help them through this parts perspective again, right? What you just represented there, Robin, that's you're kind of speaking for a part that has that perspective. It's almost like a loving friend, a well-intentioned friend sitting there next to us saying, hey, here are all these reasons why you shouldn't try again, right? Really well-intentioned. And that may be great advice. Or it may be well-intentioned, not great advice. That may not be the friend that I might listen to who's discouraging me from trying again. Well, it's not a friend. In this situation, it's a part of us. So it's helping the person to get more aware of like who in there is trying to protect me by not having me take these chances again, right? Let me work with her. Let me help her to understand that there's a much broader picture than that. Our parts of very narrow perspectives, but there's a version of us in there that has a very broad, wide perspective and sees possibility and change and hope and things being different. And that's who we want to follow.
Got it. So it's focusing on the part that is again optimistic
Mhm.
versus the part of ourself that is telling us all of these stories
Right.
so that we'll stay safe, I'm thinking.
Exactly.
And
Right.
so we isolate and we don't go out, and the voices in our head are telling us, but that's just a part of this, is what you're
That's
saying.
right. Exactly.
If you tap into the other part that says, get out there, girl, go call somebody and grab a
Yeah.
glass of wine, you know, just talk to people. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be your next date or your next boyfriend or husband, but just start communicating and getting out there and believing there's a broader way to live. That's a start, you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're born to connect. We're really born for connection and closeness with other humans. That's kind of our main. This is arguable, so I'm making a big statement here. I hear that. But humans we're wired to connect. Let me put it that way. Not born to, wired to connect. And so if we're depriving ourselves of experiencing future connections with lovers or deep friends or whoever it is that we're afraid to take a chance with again, we're missing out on some of the best parts of life. And I wish I could quote it, Robin, because I've listened to some of your other interviews, and some people said it better than I could, or you might have said it, of like, we've got to stay open to possibility and keep getting out there and keep risking what comes with finding love, which is you could get hurt. You could feel disappointment. You could get rejected. You could find love and that person could die. I mean, let's just get realistic. So, right. All the risks are there. And yet for what? I mean, for what I'd say the most important thing is that we can experience, which is connection, closeness, love, a life partnership. It's worth it. It's worth it.
How do you get people unstuck, though, from their patterns, from repeating these unhealthy patterns? They're beating themselves up, they're feeling shame, and at the same time, pressure. What are some ways that they can stop, beating themselves up and saying, I was the bad guy in this one, or he was the bad guy, and then they're playing victim?
Sure. Well, it's a lot of self-compassion. I talk to people a lot about self-compassion, really learning to relate to yourself in ways that are loving, accepting, compassionate, that are taking an honest look at what happened back there. Yeah, some of this was mine, right? Some of this is my growth edge, my work to do. And let me learn from that. And boy, some of this was really not mine, right? We're in charge of our 50%, but we can't be in charge of the other 50%, right? I was lied to. I was misled. Things happen that were out of our control, both of our control. It's not looking to blame the partner, but it's taking honest ownership of like what's mine and what's yours, and maybe what are things that are outside of both of our responsibility. So we believe that we can control so much more in life than we actually can, and so really recognizing what's my part, what did I have to control back there. Most importantly, what can I learn from that? Because guilt serves a purpose if we're doing something wrong or bad, right? Guilt is helpful. If you're going in to steal, gum from a candy shop as a child, it's guilt that tells you, you know what, we shouldn't be doing this. And so you put it back, you don't steal it, and that guilt goes away like it's supposed to. If we're still feeling guilt even after we're through that and we're not doing that anymore, then that's self-imposed. So we can really work with that part of ourselves of like, wait a minute, I am telling myself I should still feel guilty about things that I'm no longer doing, and maybe that weren't even my responsibility in the first place. And so we work on letting that go, and self-compassion is a way to do that. And then also that's kind of working within yourself, but having great friends, I mean, therapy always helps too, but having great friends or people in your life that are going to reinforce that message.
That is so important to have the right friends.
Yeah.
I think when you're in midlife, you start weeding the garden. Right. When you start, if you're conscious and you're doing the work with somebody like Justin, you are now weeding the garden from those friends that are poo-pooing you and telling you you cannot do it.
Right.
And it's really important to be surrounded by cheerleaders and people who are your champion. Okay, what I've got to do it as we've gone from relationship with ourselves into relationship with somebody else. Then we've talked about now you're on your own, that relationship that you have, the opening up to what the possibilities of love. Now I've got to ask you about these dating apps. I've asked several of my experts about them, and I want your take for women in midlife. Do they facilitate connection or do they complicate it? I'd love to get your take, and maybe it's both, but you tell me.
Yeah, the easy answer is both, Robin. I was I was going to say that. I think it is though. I think it's partly in how you use it. I think apps are fine, but they need to augment other ways that you're trying to meet people in real life. I think it depends on which apps you choose. And you are welcome to ask follow-up questions. I will admit that I'm not a dating expert like a lot of other people are, so I sometimes connect them with other resources. But my take on this is go ahead and use the apps, but note your experience of it. Some people find them helpful and useful. Other people find them discouraging. And if you're discouraged from finding love, then that's something to move away from. I encourage people more to let everyone who knows them and loves them know that they are open to dating again, and to have an energy about them as they go out in the world that is an openness, a receptivity to connection and closeness and chance meetings. And everyone has these really great stories. Not everyone, plenty of relationships started by way of we had some great connection. We crossed paths somewhere, or someone said something to somebody else, and a common thread with that is that those people were open to connection. And so there are a lot of ways other than dating apps to go out there and find your next person. I'm not sure I totally answered your question.
I think you did, and I think you answered in such an interesting way. You said just yes, you try the dating apps, but not if you're discouraged by love. Right. In other words, because it will reinforce. Exactly. When you look at those pictures, you go, see, there's no one for me. See, not one of these guys. You're just swiping. Nobody's for me. And it will build on that negativity. You're open, fine, but augment it with other things. And most importantly, tell your friends you're available. That is going to open you up to parties and possibilities and maybe getting picked up and all kinds of things. Yep. That's great. So Justin, lastly, what is the one key takeaway you want listeners to remember about finding love again after a significant loss, a divorce, or becoming a widow, or just breaking up with somebody that you were with for a really long time? What's that one key takeaway for our listeners that they can go off and start doing tomorrow?
Yeah. At the risk of repeating myself, being open to the possibility of love again. You can find love again. You can find people you are attracted to again. They are out there. I hear so often there are no good guys left. That's just not the case. There are good guys and females and all gender expressions. There are wonderful people out there. So being open, being hopeful, continuing to take chances. And most people who want to find love after their last relationship ended, regardless of how that went down, they can find it.
That's beautiful. And I love that you started too by telling us that you have really good guys coming into your office.
Absolutely.
That are middle-aged guys that want closeness and connection. They want somebody that can be their best friend, that they can, do things with. So they're out there. And I want everybody to be inspired by this information that Justin's giving us from a wonderful therapeutic point of view. If you don't have somebody coaching you, if you don't have somebody that you're in therapy with, somebody like Justin, get that person to cheer you on and to help you find those different parts of yourself. So in that vein, Justin, how can people find you and get in touch with you?
Sure. So I'm in Seattle, Washington. My practice is claritycounselingseattle.com. I actually run a group. There are 8 relationship and sex therapists that are on our team. So if you find the website, claritycounselingseattle.com, you can connect with me that way. I'd love to hear whoever wants to reach out to chat, or I love giving resources out or answering questions. So I welcome that.
That's wonderful. That's so generous of you. Thank you so much for being here, Justin. I loved our conversation and I loved meeting you.
Oh,
You are a gift. Thank you so
thank you,
much.
Robin.
So,
Thank
all
you.
right, everyone. That's it for today's episode of Plenty of Husbands. If you want to hear more wisdom and inspiration from the experts, follow Plenty of Husbands on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And join us next Wednesday when we drop a new episode. Until next time, I'm your host, Robin Fisher Roffer, reminding you to practice those ABCs of love: action, belief, and courage. It's time to step into your next chapter and live your greatest love story. Thanks so much, Justin. Thanks, everyone. Bye.